The first time Brett's fingers brushed mine by the firelight, I knew I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. What began as innocent banter in a snowbound lodge became a hunger that unraveled my marriage, my morals, and the life I had built for 30 years. Need a hand with that? Brett's voice cut through the lodge's chatter as I fumbled with the ancient coffee maker. I turned, cheeks flushing. He leaned against the kitchen doorway, sleeves rolled to his elbows, a smirk playing on his lips. At 28, he radiated a confidence I had mistaken for arrogance when we had met earlier, until his wit disarmed me during the staff meeting. "It's possessed," I laughed, too aware of my wedding band pressing into my finger. The principal said this retreat would be relaxing. She didn't mention 1980s appliances. He stepped closer. Cedarwood cologne. Calloused hands nudging mine aside. "Let me." My ex-girlfriend had one of these. Took me 3 months to figure out she wasn't worth the effort. Our eyes met. The coffee maker hissed. Thank you for subscribing to this channel, and a huge shout out to our returning viewers. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, please do. It fuels the stories you love. Share your thoughts in the comments. Could you walk away from a connection like this? By dinner, a blizzard raged outside. 40 teachers crammed into the lodge's dining room, laughing over wine. Brett sat across from me, knee grazing mine under the table. My husband Greg's face flickered in my mind. How he had waved me off this morning, eyes glued to the stock report. "You'll be fine, Trace. It's 3 days. Tracy?" Brett's voice snapped me back. He held out a bottle of Merlot. "You vanished for a second. Just tired." I sipped, warmth spreading down my throat. Later, by the fire, he found me again. Snow piled against the windows. The others had drifted to bed. "Can't sleep?" He settled beside me on the hearth, close enough that our shoulders touched. "Too much noise." I gestured vaguely at the storm. "Or not enough." His voice dropped. "You're not like them. The other teachers. You're alive." The logs crackled. My pulse thrummed. "No, do not. Do not. Do not." His thumb grazed my wrist. "Tell me I am imagining this." The clock ticked. I didn't pull away. Somewhere upstairs, a door slammed. We jerked apart. "We should not." I stood, trembling. "Yeah." He rose, towering over me. "Tomorrow." But tomorrow came too fast. And with it, the avalanche. The morning after the firelight almost kiss, I woke to the shrill scream of my alarm. Greg's goodbye text blinked on my phone, "Stay warm," as if he had already forgotten I existed. Downstairs, the lodge hummed with the clatter of breakfast plates and the scent of burnt bacon. Brett stood by the waffle iron, laughing with the math teacher. His eyes flicked to mine. Look away, I told myself, but I didn't. By noon, the storm had paused, leaving the world smothered in white. The principal herded us outside for team building. Brett materialized beside me as we laced rented ice skates in the lodge's gear room. "Ever skated before?" he asked, kneeling to tighten my frayed laces without asking. His touch lingered on my ankle. "When I was a kid," I said, pulse racing. "Before mortgages and midlife crises." He grinned. "Midlife? You're like a Bordeaux, better with age." The pond was a glassy mirror, framed by snow-draped pines. Teachers wobbled and shrieked, clinging to each other. Brett skated backward in front of me, effortless. "Come on, Ms. Emerson. Show me those childhood skills." Wind bit my cheeks as I pushed forward, but his gaze warmed me. I stumbled, his hands caught my hips. "Steady," he murmured, thumbs pressing into my wool coat. I jerked away, pretending not to notice the hunger in his stare. Later, we hiked a trail labeled easy, our group strung out like loose beads. Brett matched my pace, our boots crunching in sync. "You're quiet," he said. "Just stop thinking." About your hands." about Greg's empty side of the bed, about how I've become a cliché. The Odyssey unit I am teaching. Penelope's loyalty versus Odysseus' adventures. He snorted. Penelope got a raw deal. 20 years waiting? Guy screws up one Cyclops fight and gets a free pass? I laughed, startled. You've read Homer? Substitute teacher is not equal to idiot. He winked. Besides, some of us root for the monsters. At dusk, the group gathered around the fireplace for hot cocoa and confessions. Brett slid next to me on the hearth, our thighs touching. A young art teacher gushed about her fiancé. My chest ached. Love's a scam, Brett muttered into his mug. Cynical for 28. Says the woman wearing her wedding ring like a shackle. The room blurred. I stood abruptly, spilling cocoa on my sleeve. I need a towel. He followed me to the supply closet. Inside, shelves towered with linens and light bulbs. Brett shut the door, plunging us into shadows. You're not happy, he said. You don't know me. I know you flinch when your phone buzzes. Know you've got a crease between your eyebrows from faking smiles. He stepped closer. Know you haven't been kissed in years. Stop, I interrupted. He didn't. His palm cupped my jaw. Tell me to stop. I should have. But his mouth found mine, hot and reckless, tasting of salt and stolen sugar. My back hit the shelves. A roll of paper towels thudded to the floor. For one dizzying minute, I was 20 again, wanted, wild. Voices outside. We broke apart. This is a mistake, I sighed. He thumbed my smudged lipstick. Then why are you shaking? That night, I lay awake, replaying the closet's darkness. Greg's old t-shirt clung to me, sour with detergent. Down the hall, Brett's laugh echoed from a poker game. I pressed my face into the pillow. One kiss. That's all. But already, the ice inside me was cracking, threatening to drown everything I knew. The drive home from the retreat felt like a funeral procession. Greg greeted me with a distracted peck on the cheek, his reading glasses perched on his nose as he scrolled through emails. How was the snow? He asked, like he was inquiring about a grocery list. Cold, I said, clutching my suitcase like a shield. Brett's first text came that night. Missed you in the supply closet today. I deleted it, then stared at the empty screen until sunrise. 3 days later, he cornered me in the school parking lot after the bell rang. Students streamed past us, tossing crumpled chip bags and laughter into the frosty air. Brett leaned against my car, arms crossed, breath visible. Ignoring me, Ms. Emerson? This can't happen. My keys jingled in my shaking hand. I am married, and I am not asking you to file papers. He stepped closer, voice low. Just let me take you to dinner. Dinner? Or whatever you want to call it. The diner was a relic off Route 9, vinyl booths sticky with syrup. Brett slid into the seat beside me instead of across, his knee pressing mine under the table. Tell me something real, he said, stealing a fry from my plate. Something Greg doesn't know. I hesitated. I wanted to be a poet. In college. Why did you stop? Greg said it wasn't practical. The admission curdled in my throat. Brett's smirk faded. You let him decide? It's called compromise. Sounds like surrender. He traced my knuckles. Let me reignite you.
They met again. And again.
Cheap motels, back seats of rental cars, the janitor's closet during lunch prep. Brett's hands were everywhere, mapping my body like he owned it. But after, he would grow cold, demanding answers. When are you leaving him? He asked one March afternoon, buttoning his shirt in the murky light of the Pineview Motel. Rain lashed the windows. I sat up, sheets pooling at my waist. I never said I would. You don't say anything. He slammed his fist on the nightstand. A lamp shuddered. You think I am just some distraction? I am in love with you, Tracy. The word love hung like a grenade. You're 28, I whispered. And you're alive when you're with me. Admit it. I couldn't. At home, Greg began to notice. The perfume I forgot to wear. The receipts I lost. One night, he grabbed my wrist as I reached for my wine glass. Who is he? I shot through my veins.
What?
You think I am blind? His grip tightened. You've been glowing. And it sure as hell isn't for me. I yanked free. Don't be ridiculous. The lie stained the air between us. Brett escalated. Flowers sent to the school. Late night calls. I need you. He would growl, voice rough, and I would cave, slipping out while Greg snored. Then, in April, the crack that split the earth. We were in his apartment, a studio reeking of ramen and regret, when I spotted the photo. Black and white, tucked in a dusty frame behind his TV. A young woman with Brett's eyes, holding a baby. Your mom? I asked, picking it up. He snatched it away. None of your business. Brett, drop it. But I didn't. That night, I combed through old yearbooks, Greg's filing cabinet, the past he had sealed shut. And there it was, a faded court document. Petition for paternity. Defendant, Gregory Emerson. My stomach dropped. I confronted Brett at dawn, shaking the paper in his face. You're his son. He lounged on his mattress, shirtless, smirking. Took you long enough. This was all what? Revenge? Mom killed herself when I was 16. His voice iced over. Left a note about the love of her life. Dear old dad, who tossed her aside like a used napkin. Sound familiar? The room tilted. So, you seduced me to hurt him? He stood, crowding me against the wall. Seduced? You begged for it. Face it, Tracy. You're just like him. Selfish. Hollow. You deserved every second. I slapped him.
He laughed.
Driving home, I vomited in a gas station parking lot. Greg's face filled my mind, not as he was now, but decades ago, holding my hand in the delivery room as our daughter wailed. She's perfect, he had whispered, crying. But nothing was perfect now. I walked into the house at 7 a.m. Greg sat at the kitchen table, my journal open in front of him. Brett? He rasped. The walls closed in. Greg's hands trembled as he held my journal, its pages splayed open to Brett's name, scrawled in margins, circled in ink, a shrine to my shame. His face turned the color of old ash. How long? He asked, voice splintering. It's not what you... How long? The clock ticked. I swallowed bile. 3 months. He hurled the journal at the wall. It struck a framed photo of our daughter's graduation, shattering glass. Get out. Greg, please.
Out.
I slept in my Honda that night, seat reclined, frost creeping across the windshield. Brett didn't answer my calls. By week's end, I rented a studio above a pawn shop. The walls smelled of mildew and defeat. I hung no photos. Greg's lawyer sent divorce papers. I left them unopened on the stained carpet. The school fired me on a Tuesday. The principal's office felt cavernous, her voice crisp. A parent saw you arguing with Mr. Cole in the parking lot. They connected the dots. It's over, I pleaded. It meant nothing. She slid a termination letter across her desk. We can't risk the scandal. That afternoon, I cleared my classroom. Students gawked as I boxed my dog-eared copies of The Great Gatsby. One girl whispered, "My mom said you're a homewrecker." Brett's classroom was empty, desk wiped clean. The secretary said he had quit. I drank. Cheap vodka from the corner store, gulped straight from the bottle as I scrolled our old texts. Miss you. Need you. Liar. One night, I dialed him again. To my shock, he answered. What? Cold. Bored. Why didn't you tell me? I slurred. About dear dad? You never asked. You used me. He laughed. You let me. Thought you would figure it out faster. Mom's diary mentioned Greg loved vulnerable women.
Guess you proved her right.
The line went dead. I smashed the phone against the wall. Flashbacks ambushed me. 1995. Greg and I painting our first house, splattered in sunrise yellow. He kissed my temple. Forever, Trace. 2003. Him weeping in the NICU. Our daughter's tiny fist gripping his finger. She's got your eyes. 2018. Silent dinners. His chair facing the TV, mine facing the dark. I wandered the pawnshop aisles, hawking my wedding ring. The clerk gave me $80. Greg changed the locks. I begged on his porch, November rain soaking through my coat. Let me explain. He opened the door just enough to glare. Our daughter stood behind him, eyes red-rimmed. Mom? How could you? Sweetheart. Greg slammed the door. I slid to my knees, wailing into the storm. That night, I downed pills with vodka. Not enough to die, just enough to mute the memories. Woke to a paramedic's flashlight. Ma'am, your landlord called. Said you weren't responding. At the hospital, a nurse with kind eyes handed me a pamphlet, Support Groups for Addiction. I stuffed it in the trash. December came. My studio's radiator died. I wore 3 sweaters, slept under coats, and dreamed of firelight. Brett's hands, Greg's laugh, my daughter's voice calling me, mommy in a life that no longer existed. The divorce finalized on Christmas Eve. Greg got the house, the savings, the friends. I got ashes. I found Brett on a Tuesday in January, hunched at a dive bar's counter, nursing a whiskey. His leather jacket hung loose, stubble shading his jaw. For a heartbeat, I saw the man I had craved, the one who had made me feel electric. Then he turned, and his eyes iced over. Here to cry? He smirked. Or beg. I sat without asking. Why me? You were easy. He swirled his drink. Greg's trophy wife, starved for attention. I wouldn't have gotten to him faster if you had been smarter. The bartender glanced at us. I kept my voice steady. Did you ever care? He leaned close, whiskey sour on his breath. You were a job. Congrats, you failed the audition. I stood, knees buckling. You're a monster. And you're a fool. He tossed cash on the bar. Tell Dad I said hi. The divorce decree arrived the next week. Greg took everything but my name. Emerson, a relic of a life I had scorched. My daughter's wedding invitation never came. When I called, her voicemail answered. You know what to do.
Beep.
Winter hardened into spring. I moved to a smaller town, dyed my hair black, and volunteered at the Cedar Ridge Literacy Center. Kids with scraped knees and tired eyes shuffled in after school, clutching battered paperbacks. Miss Tracy? A boy named Javier frowned at Charlotte's web. Why would Charlotte die if she was the good guy? I hesitated. Sometimes, good people pay for others' mistakes. That's dumb.
Yeah.
I ruffled his hair. It is. One evening, I stayed late, shelving dictionaries. A donation box spilled open, revealing a familiar book, The Odyssey. Inside, a note in my own handwriting from 2002. For Greg, may our journey never end. Love, Tracy. I hurled it into the trash. Summer brought tourists and heat. I avoided mirrors, ignored men, and drank coffee black. Some nights, I would drive past my old house. Greg had painted it blue. New curtains. A tricycle on the lawn, grandkids? I never stopped. At the literacy center, Javier read his first full sentence aloud. His grin outshone the flickering fluorescence. I did it. You did, I said, throat tight. Progress, I guess. But guilt lingers. It's in the way I jump at sirens, the way I still taste bourbon when it rains, the way I whisper, I am sorry to empty rooms. Redemption's a myth, You just learned to breathe under the weight. Yet here I am.
Here I stay.
To every viewer who followed Tracy's turbulent journey, thank you. This story was a raw exploration of choices, consequences, and the fragile line between love and destruction. If it gripped you, please drop a comment sharing your thoughts. Could Tracy have avoided her fate? Did Brett's revenge go too far? Let's debate. Like, share, and subscribe to keep this channel alive. Your support fuels every twist, tear, and tale. For those still haunted by this story, remember, the next story is just a click away.
Stay tuned.
Stay passionate.